Ready. Ooh, it's a light shirt. It's going to get sweat through by the end of this for sure. Don't judge me, Mitch.
No, not at all, bro. You're repping Greek life.
Yeah, man. Shout out my sister. ASA. It's family day this week. I got a free shirt out of it.
I was telling Frank about your Tupac picture back there. I was giving him some Tupac lore.
Yeah, man. I heard some of it during my frustrations of screaming at my computer. He's an amazing guy, man. I read one of his biographies one time and was like blown away by like all the. It was interesting because it was like a biography about his life, but then also like each chapter would go back and forth between what was going on like in the world at that time too. Mm-hmm. That kind of like described the climate he grew up in, and fascinating dude, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you really think about some of those interviews, he was talking about fake news 20 years before Trump.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he was,
and that's what he called it. Remember in that one interview how he's like, "Dude, they tell you what they want you to think about me. They don't know the real me." Oh, that's deep.
Yeah,
Donald Trump calls it fake news, and then boom, it's like, guess it was more catchy.
Well, yeah, people like run with like the thug life instead of like actually looking into what Pac was trying to do with that. They just think like, oh, thugs, that's just gangsters. It's like, no, it's there's so much more behind what he was trying to say there and what he was trying to do just with gang culture in general.
No, what's fascinating is when he took on that persona of Don Illuminati, right? Where he was referencing Machiavelli. Well, if you really think about it, dude, Machiavelli was just a revolutionary in his own time. He eventually got clipped by the monarchy, but he was trying to tell people, be your own individual, be yourself, teaching people how to hustle. And it's funny because there's a lot of similarities between him and Tupac. I can see how Tupac read him and was like a kindred spirit.
And then faked his own death, just like Machiavelli.
Or was he actually taken out?
Oh, no, they took him out. Yeah, man. He was an open critic to the machine. So, dude, back then, the Medicis and all them, they didn't play around, dude. He stepped out of line, dude. And remember, back then, it was popular to do it out in the open. So, it was part of the entertainment.
Was it the Medicis that got Galileo, too? Wasn't that around the same time?
The church got Galileo.
It was the church. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, dude, they locked Galileo in a tower, and he was still working prolifically, still doing astronomy, still doing everything. That's like one of my biggest gripes with the church, dude. I mean, dude, I'm a person of faith, but when it comes to institutions of church, it's like I just don't mix with them. But it's like, they sell you empathy, compassion, love, which, let's be honest, the person we all know as Jesus Christ, Yeshua ben Joseph, right? He was an educated man, and he never hoarded education and intelligence. Mm-hmm. And then what does the Vatican do? They loot everything and they take it all back to a top secret library.
And they're completely unmonitored. They're like their own country, old police force, own bank. They can do whatever you want.
And what's crazy is not only do they have all the stuff they took from Alexandria via the Romans, all the incredible literature I'm sure is included from them, the Essenes, they destroyed the Essenes. They assimilated the Greeks, but they took all the stuff from the Americas. So all the codices that were written by the Mexica, which are the Aztec, the Olmec, the Inca, all that stuff is down there too.
Really?
Yes. And it's like,
wow,
dude, what's crazy is there's like 3 codices that you can actually read by Spanish priests when they arrived to the Americas. And it's so funny because they are so blown away by our cultures in the Americas that even in the codices, because these were educated men, they were scientists, right? Trained observers. Dude, they would write like, hey, what the Inca are doing is amazing. What the Aztecs are doing is incredible. And they go into extraordinary detail about plant medicine. And of course, the church is like, well, because, the people in Mesoamerica was like, oh, you don't need a church to find God. You just, go to the plants, go to nature. That's God.
Right.
And, the church obviously wants to filter you through the building. So they took all that knowledge and it's locked up in the Vatican.
So you think it's more maybe trying to cover up the history, or like they didn't want people to know about the plant medicine, or maybe even like something like an aliens that it could have influenced culture thousands and thousands of years ago that would disprove anything?
It's interesting when you go into that because I try to teach my kids as well as my clients. The only way to really see what someone is up to is when their words align to their actions. If those move congruently, then you could probably assume that that person's on the up and up. So if an organization is really selling love, compassion, right? Like the the religious markers,
tenets, yeah.
But then their actions are invasion, acquisition, financial, right? Monetary. It's like you're not congruent with your message. So obviously you're not being honest.
Right.
And let's be honest, like what's fascinating is I've taken the deep dives on Jesus. And so like Jesus was known to come from a group in the Middle East called the Essenes. And the Essenes were astrologers, alchemists, were into meditation, were into reincarnation. And some biblical theologians believe that the New Testament is written by Essenes. That's why the Old Testament and the New Testament sound very different.
Yeah.
But and Jesus was part of these people. John the Baptist was part of these people. And let's be honest, if let's say Jesus was walking around now and the guy had such an extraordinary message, who do you think would be the first people jumping on Jesus? The church, the government. I mean, they'd be censoring him like nobody's business because his message is an inclusive, right? And so again, when people's actions don't line up with their words, that's the biggest red flag in our culture.
Yeah.
Well, they did crucify him.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, yeah.
2023 years ago Friday.
I know, and we're talking about him, and it's Good Friday this Friday.
I love how we got to this from Tupac.
Yeah.
Conversation started with Tupac.
Well, it's interesting because there's always luminaries that come into our world, and I think that's what they're meant to do, man. Like Tupac had probably one of the best quotes I've ever heard. He said, "I won't change the world, but I'll definitely touch the mind of the person who will." And I'm like, well, yeah, like, dude, everyone listens to his music, and I still listen to his music. And
the acronym for Thug Life, the hate you give little infants fucks everyone. That's like so true because it just passes down that like whatever defeated mentality or hatred mentality, like it just passes down negative energy through generations. And he's right. It fucks everybody in the long run. So he's a wise man.
Yeah, he was definitely ahead of his time. But if you guys want to circle back to the plant medicine part, and I'll share all my experiences with you guys.
Should we introduce him, Frank?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to cut an intro when we do shows like this. But this is the Friendship News Hour on April the 5th, 2023. My name is Frank. His name is Alex. And we are joined by the wise, sage, and handsome Mitch Zaralegui. Hello, sir. Thank you for being here. I want to know about your experience, but I really want to know how you got to the point where you allowed yourself to open up to something as strong of an experience as plant medicine. And were you always open to it? Because really what I would love to is for somebody who's hesitant on the fence, or even somebody who opposes the idea of going out of yourself, out of your body into another realm, and just see from one person's experience how you got to that point.
Sure. And good morning, guys. It's awesome to be with you guys. Fan of the program. I really enjoy listening to your guys' conversations.
Thanks, Mitch.
As you can imagine, being raised Mexican because I am Mexican, but American because I live in America, my family influences were heavily Catholic, right? Catholic Christian. So you know what the Catholic Church says about anything apart from wine. You don't drink, you don't do drugs, you don't have sex, you don't have anything. So those were some of the tenets that really were imposed on me as a kid. So even as a young man growing up in the hood, when my friends were smoking pot and drinking, that was just not one of my things. I've always been very anti-substance. I don't know why. I'm not saying I haven't tried them. It's just not a real big thing for me, for my taste or whatever you want to call it. And so the closest thing to an addiction I've had is really reading. Ever since a young man, I've always found knowledge in books. And so the way I came to this is at the time I was experiencing a lot of life challenges, challenges in my relationship, challenges with my kids. My mom was getting close to passing away. And it was just a lot of upheaval in my life. And so, I have an undergrad in psychology, so I'm totally okay with going and speaking to a therapist. But I had already done that a couple times. And the first thing they did was try to hand me some pharmacology, right? They were like, okay, Mitch, you're sad. fix your sadness with pills. And because I was unaware, I was like, okay, let's try it. But it didn't work. You know, I'm a voracious reader, man. So I read anything I can get my hands on, especially books on personal development, books of spirituality. So I was already doing meditation and breath work. You know, I love martial arts. So I had already done a lot of that in Kung Fu and Tai Chi and Qi Gong. But I was in such a bad place. I remembered that there was a mystic in Mexico. Her name was Maria Sabine, and everyone went to her to do mushroom ceremonies. So the Beatles, Walt Disney. I mean, it's like a who's who, David Bowie. I mean, you can research it later of people who went to go see Maria Sabine, and the list is like extraordinary. You're like, forget about it. So I remembered that I read those journals, and then I started reading about it. And I started doing a lot of research on plant medicine because there's a bunch of different types. And plant medicine is indigenous to the world. So like, you know, obviously everything that exists in the Americas has been here for thousands of years. Everything that exists in Europe has been there for thousands of years, in Asia and every culture. And I started recognizing that it's a practice in every culture that hasn't been westernized. Right? And by westernized, I mean Greeks to Romans, Romans to everything, Romans to the church. So I was in such a bad place in mind, body, and spirit that I was like, okay, if all these people are doing it, it must be something worth exploring. And so it was more out of desperation than courage. But I had to find courage because kind of like what you said on the intro, you know, get to the point where you're willing to do something. So because I'm a big reader, you know, Alex is like, yeah, no, thank you. I was like, let me do a little bit of the science behind this, right? So like, for example, the most active ingredient in ayahuasca is DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Well, what people don't know is we're already producing that on our own out of our pineal gland, especially when we sleep. You know, when you're in REM sleep, and you're dreaming that you're going out with, you know, the hottest model or playing on an NFL football field or whatever your dream is, or rocking out with Ozzy Osbourne, your brain is already producing DMT to put you into that experience.
Interesting. Yeah. I thought I had always heard that DMT was released in your brain only like the moment you were born and the moment you died. But so it's continuous throughout life, huh?
Oh, you're experiencing every night. You're experiencing every night.
Very cool.
I mean, think about it, Alex, when we were younger men. And you have these really intense dreams with women that you're like, oh my God, I'm like kissing this woman, right? And then you wake up and you're like, no, this was just a dream. Well, think about it. In order for it to become that visceral of an experience, it has to be a chemical thing going on.
That's true, yeah.
So, okay. So when I saw some of the science behind it, DMT already in our bodies, you know, I read a journal that said that when people get out of ayahuasca trips, they don't feel hangovers or anything like that. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, you know, and I consider myself a bit of a scientist. So I'm like, well, if we already have DMT and then I ingest DMT, well, obviously my body knows what to do with it. So there's not even like a hangover effect. It just has to go through our digestive system and you move forward. So that's kind of like in my rudimentary thinking about it was kind of the understanding I came to it. And I think that's what helped me say, well, you know, it was used for thousands of years in all of our cultures. You know, the first time you guys heard of it was the oracle at Delphi, right? At the time of Greece. Oh. They would ingest a form of hallucinogenic. So that's what the oracle in Delphi was doing. So people would walk thousands of miles to go see what the oracle was going to say. She would ingest some form of plant medicine or ergot or some type of fungus, and then she would go into trance, and then she would give the Greeks the knowledge.
Very cool.
So, yeah, man. So it was like, so I was in such a bad place. I do a lot of journaling, man. And so in my journals, I could read, and I'm just like, man, I'm not in a good place. You know, not a strong mind, body, spirit position. And so I started researching. I found tons of interviews. I saw a bunch of videos on YouTube. Then I started doing more research about the different types. And of course, you read some of them and you're like, wow, that sounds like a lot. But, you know, I guess I've always had a belief, and this goes to my own personal beliefs, is that we're born divine, that we're born like a clean slate. but then we acquire all kinds of knowledge, and not all of that knowledge is good. And especially before the ages of 0 to 10, science has proven that we're in a theta brain state. A theta brain state is almost like hypnosis. So imagine we're going through the most critical time of our lives in a hypnosis state, and we're just assimilating information with no filter. So if your mom is beating on your dad, or your dad's beating on your mom, or there's a family party and there's like 80 beers on the table, you're like, oh, that's normal. No, that's not normal. But we're so little, or we don't have a coach there that's telling us, hey, that's crazy. Don't pay attention to that or whatever.
Just a malleable brain.
Yeah, malleable brain. So I'm building all my research on, okay. And then, to be super transparent with you guys, the hardest time of my life was at that age for me, because my dad was a performer in Mexico, and he loved the nightlife. He had an alcohol problem, and my mother was hooked on prescription meds. That was the time, that 80s, 70s time where they were just handing out Valium and Xanax like M&Ms. And so when I read that piece of research that the most impactful experiences of our lives are between like 0 to 8, 0 to 10, that for me was all I needed to make the decision. Because I thought, oh my goodness, that's like the worst time of my life, and I'm not feeling good right now. Let's go for it.
Now, do you consult with family before you do something like this?
No, it was a very personal thing, and here you guys are going to love this part. So the famous author Joseph Campbell, are you guys familiar with him?
Oh yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the guy that inspired George Lucas and all those other guys that write the movies, he would talk about that we all have a hero's journey. That's why we love movies like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, because it identifies with something in our spirit. So what I told my wife and my mom, and my mom doesn't count, bro, because my mom was an adventurous woman. My mom was like, go for it. Do it for like a month. and my wife was like, okay, if that's what you want. But I was on a mission to get better. And because I'm very headstrong, obviously I didn't think that plant medicine would resolve everything, but I believed it would be a good first step on getting better. Like I was looking for context.
Okay, so that was my question. So what was your intent going into it? I mean, yeah, get better, but specifically, what were you looking for?
I in my mind, in my imagination, kept reading and listening to people describe the experiences, and a lot of people talked about feeling changed from them. And at that point, I was feeling so much pressure, man. I was feeling like a balloon, that in my mind and my rudimentary thinking, I thought, well, if I have an experience, it's at least going to change my perspective and my context on how I perceive my own life. And even that in my imagination, like, when an 18-wheeler hits the brakes and it goes, that's what I imagined in my mind. I was like, okay, well, however it goes, whatever happens, that is just going to relieve some of the pressure. Yeah. That was really what my intention was. But by then I had already read about 10 books about it, listened to about 30, 40 interviews about it, and then looked at the science behind it.
For me, I always thought DMT and ayahuasca were like similar but different things. But I'm hearing now that DMT is in ayahuasca. So did you, in your research, see like, because I know people will just smoke DMT straight up, and ayahuasca is kind of a different process. Like, what made you decide, like, okay, I want to go more of the natural route than what I would assume is more of like a process route?
That's a great question, Alex, because being a person of a spiritual nature, I'm not into ingesting substances. Don't get me wrong, man. I'll go have a beer or smoke a cigar with a friend or whatever. I mean, I just don't mean consume it recreationally, because I don't like putting foreign substances in my body. And so because I'm a person who's really into, like, in the martial arts, man, there's tons of ceremony. You get a belt. It's a big hoopla. You're rewarded for it. It's like a step of ascension. In my mind, I always thought that shaman do this, and it's something to take very serious. It's not recreation, And so in my mind, I was like, no, I need to go somewhere where it's being respected, where it's being treated like it's something very important. Almost like if I was going to church, because, we all know our friends that are taking ecstasy tablets at the clubs and all that. And how often do you see that end terribly? All the time. So it's like, I'm like, no, I want to do something. And because, like I was telling you guys, in ancient times, when children were moving from childhood into young adulthood, there's always ceremonies to acknowledge that. You know, in the Jewish tradition, you see a bar mitzvah. In every tradition has it, right? Like in Catholicism, you see First Communion. What people don't understand is those are forms of ceremony, but they have all the bells and whistles of a ceremony, right? You're blessed. These are all words that are included in these ceremonies. But what I came to learn is, like, our First Nations people and people in the Americas and in Eastern Europe, in Siberia and Russia, that's another big hub for shamanism, including Asia and the Polynesian Islands. They would give people plant medicine when they were moving from like childhood to adulthood as a form of, I don't know what you want to call it, man, like a spirit quest or a graduation or some form of thing. That when I read that, I'm like, wow, so shaman or people of a tribe, their wise men would give this to children. So it can't be a bad thing. Right. I'm like, and then here's one of the sealers for me. So again, I go back to, like, I'm a voracious reader. So I started thinking to myself, why am I so afraid of this? And my question was, is Mitch afraid of it? Or have I been told to be afraid of it by quote unquote authorities, government, church? So is it me who's really afraid, or am I processing fear that was imposed on me? And, you know, when you start looking at it like that, I thought, well, I know what the church is about. I know what the government's about. And in reality, this is about Mitch getting better. And you see that mental health is an epidemic in our country, right? PTSD is an epidemic in our country. What's even worse is PTSD is an epidemic in our country to the most fragile demographic, which is homeless people and people from the military. So it's like, talk about people who need help, right? And I read in one of those journals that they were doing that for people with PTSD. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I found a place in Mexico. You guys will think this is funny, but in some places, plant medicine is used as a form to detox people who have substance abuse problems. Oh, because of the, I'll explain it to you in a little bit, but they use it to get people off alcohol, heroin, crack. I mean, like everything. Obviously, it's not used stateside, but it's legal in Mexico and in many parts of the Americas. So I found a place in Ensenada, and it was one of those places to treat people with substance abuse. And at the time, I was like, well, dude, why not go do it with these people, right? They're having an experience, and I'm just a normal dude, but you know, let's go do it there. And it was a really great experience, man. I was there for a week. I did, I think 5 plant medicines while I was there, and it was an extraordinary experience. So ayahuasca is one of the most popular ones. What's extraordinary about ayahuasca is a mix of a plant and a vine. So imagine the guy who discovered that. We're going to mix the plant and the vine, and then we're going to cook it, right? And so I tried ayahuasca. There's another form of plant medicine. This one's going to gross Alex out. I just see it in his face. But one time a year, there's a bullfrog in the area of Sonora, like Arizona, and this bullfrog comes out of the dirt, out of hibernation or something. And so the shaman get a stick, like a popsicle stick, and they rub it on the back of the bullfrog, and they spread the poison like chocolate, like a chocolatier, and they let it cool, and then they break it and they smoke it like a rock. And that's called that bullfrog is known as bufo. If you look for it, it's called bufo. And then, you know, of course, we all know of the mushrooms. Mushrooms have psilocybin. You know, this goes in line with like sweat lodges and stuff like that, because in sweat lodges, they use plant medicine as well. Have either of you gentlemen done like a sweat lodge?
Never even heard of it.
Oh,
never.
Okay. So First Nation people create like a hut, and they heat up lava rocks and they put them in the center. And then the shaman is singing. You're closed into this hut, and they're using plant ceremonies and plant medicine. And that was also an extraordinary experience. But for those who have like claustrophobic issues or issues with the dark, it is a real big challenge.
So is it like it's sauna-like, but then they introduce like plants that will like do different things? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, no, and it's plants, real normal plants, like you know, we know essential oils. Everyone loves the smell of eucalyptus, so they use eucalyptus in there. They don't use any psychedelics, believe me. the teepee is closed and it's so hot, your brain right away starts adapting to it very easily.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is a pretty popular destination that you went to.
Well, I think, and I didn't mention, it was full of Americans. There was not one indigenous Mexican there. There was like 20 American people. Yeah. Those places are popping up everywhere because I think the level of desperation in people is reaching an all-time high.
Well, listen to what you just said, Mitch. Sorry to cut you off, but you just talked about taking the excretion of a frog, drying it, breaking it up, and smoking it like a crack rock. I think to any normal person listening, it's like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm good on that. Thank you very much, but I will pass.
Everything he just said, I want to try.
Well, I'll tell you guys about, so the bufo, right? The bullfrog, it's MDMA, so it has DMT. And so most plant medicines, the effect is gradual. So it kicks in maybe 20, 30 minutes after you ingest it. The MDMA, it's DMT with an extra molecule of oxygen. Dude, that is like being fired. Like, when they fire a rocket into the atmosphere? That is the closest description I could have to that.
It's like, woo!
like it's funny, but the visual I always have in my mind, like, you guys love Star Trek, right? I'm speaking to people who have seen Star Trek.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, well, when the Starship Enterprise is about to go warp, and part of it goes forward and there's a little piece that's still stuck in the back. And then when it hits, it's just like, and it disappears. Yeah. That's what I think it probably can best describe what that feels like.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting. I'll share with you guys that experience in particular because, what people don't understand is we've been indoctrinated since we were very little. And we inherited our parents' belief systems, their rules, their regulations, but we also inherited their trauma. And because our personality, as you mentioned, Alex, is super malleable when we're little, we start assimilating all those behaviors, all those feelings without a filter. So then later as an adult, and you guys have experienced this in your 30s, you hear your parents say something and you're like, no, believe that. But it was in your head hanging out like a truth.
Right.
Right. And so it's in doing that research that it also felt like I was being pushed towards the medicine because like it's very common problems with people nowadays, I believe have simple solutions. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you one of my own examples. I was raised by my mom, my grandmother, and my sister. So as much of a manly man as I am, there's a very feminine piece of me, and I'm very pro-feminine in a lot of ideas. But what I inherited, and this I didn't know until much later, is I have a savior mentality. Because I saw my mom and my grandmother go through horrible experiences, and I was too little to help them, right? Because I was a child. As a man, when I see people with a problem, or women with a problem especially, I right away want to put on the Clark Kent cape and fly in and be Superman and help them. But I didn't realize that was a maladaptive survival mechanism that I inherited because I saw my mother, sister, and grandmother suffer. It wasn't my business to save them. I was a child. So I shouldn't be referencing savior mentality thought processes and actions in my life. Mm-hmm. Really, I should just be taking care of myself and my responsibilities, which are my wife and my children. But it's that type of impactful programming that's running your subconscious that I felt was very insidious, because it was like, man, I should have never felt like the man of the house. I was only 5 years old when my dad left, but yet I saw my mom and grandmother suffer so much. I created a sub-personality, like Carl Jung would say, of the superhero. And so moving forward, I was always trying to be the superhero. And no one even assigned me that job. I inherited that job. Mm-hmm. Even when I speak about it now, I'm like, dude, that's so dysfunctional. And then you think about this. Women love you for it. Mm. How crazy is that?
Reinforcing,
yeah. Right? And then I'm like, I'm the ladies' man, and I'm closing them all over, right? But in my mind, it's like, dude, that's like some form of magic. it's like I was hypnotized or something, and then I'm using it to my benefit, but it's a dysfunctional, codependent behavior, to get into the psychology part of it.
I want to talk to you a little bit about material versus spiritual and your experience.
Oh yeah.
That's
my favorite topic.
Under this medicine. I think, you bring up a good point. You brought up a couple times about being raised under a certain religion and sort of breaking off from that when you hit the age of reason and maybe feeling a little bit jaded towards what you were taught once you start to learn new things and realize that maybe you were kept in a little bit of a bubble. I think culturally, at least in America, a lot of folks our age and even a little bit older have felt that and have moved away totally from a spiritual interaction with their life, and we interact almost exclusively materialistically. Right? When I say materialistically, I don't mean that we're greedy or that we like things or that we like in the normal sense of consumerism. I mean, I think we much less interact with anything that could be spiritual, and almost always physical. Right? If you can't prove it, if you can't see it, if it can't make 100% sense in your mind, out of your head. What was your experience in this medicine with the spiritual?
What's extraordinary that you mentioned, Frank? I'll answer this and then I'll give you the example of what it was like. Everything in our world is duality, man. Light and dark, positive and negative, good or bad. That's how it was taught to us, right? By the church, God, the devil, whatever iconography works for you. And in that same way, it's material and spirit. You know what I'm saying? And it's this thing of duality, and it's really fallacy, man. The best example I can give you is, are you familiar with the yin-yang symbol?
Sure.
Okay, right. But do you remember how in the yin and yang symbol, the white has a little bit of black and the black has a little bit of white?
Yeah.
Right? So it's the duality that always exists within every human being, because not everyone is 100% good or 100% bad. We're all a little bit of both, right? I mean, if you really want to, I can give you as many bad stories possible about myself, and then I can give you as many great stories of myself. But one of the things that you're talking about is extraordinary, because you've observed this just through seeing it, is our world is really stuck in materialism, right? And that's how it measures everyone. Alex is successful. If he goes to college, he gets his master's, he gets a great job, he's making $200,000 a year. It's like all these societal expectations. But the Alex that I just described, he might be the unhappiest dude in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And
right.
maybe if I put Alex on a farm with some chick and he's growing vegetables and he never did all those other things, he might be the happiest human being I've ever met in my life. Right? But it's unfortunate because spirituality has been tainted by structured religion. Mm-hmm. Because if you really think about it, people are turned off because of, I have to get up on Sunday and miss NFL football, go sit 2 or 3 hour sermon at an adult high school where everyone's gossiping and chicks look good and guys whatever, and it's like all these constructs, but they form the basis of people's perspectives. Because like if I were to tell you guys, hey guys, we're going to go hang out and we're going to have a spiritual experience. And I took you guys to the beach. We just hang out, we eat, we talk, and I just hold space for you. And you're going through something, we deconstruct it. I help you work it out. Now you have some strategies. Alex does the same thing. And after our 3 hour experience, you guys go home, you guys have like 5 or 6 tools in your toolkit, and you'd feel great. And that's a spiritual experience, right? Mm-hmm. Without not even involving plant medicine or anything like that. But because we've been presented with this idea of religion, of the building, of the guy in charge who, could or could not be some form of pedophile, because we all know about that. Spirituality and religion, to me, they're the furthest things apart from one another.
And yet in this world, you still can't escape the spiritual, right? Just because the organized religion aspect of it may not foster or shepherd in the spiritual the way that they're telling us it will, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? It doesn't just do away with that which can't be explained.
Right.
It just means that the way that we were traditionally fostered into it may have been a little bit skewed, led us astray. And now we're finding new ways to interact with that. And I think that kind of brings back to your experience there, is that we still need that reassurance, that enlightenment that maybe we're not finding through something like prayer or something like going to confession or whatever it is that your religion dictates that you get in that way. And I think that that's such a good way to approach something like plant medicine. When you describe these things that are so out there that really rock your brain, that take you to depths that you've never been before, that, you know, that take you for a ride that you really need to strap on, and it will change you. Right. And you can speak to that. I mean, I've had very little experience with it, but enough to know that it's something to be reckoned with and not taken lightly, having reverence for it as well.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you guys about my first experience, and it's going to have a lot of funny things and a lot of sad things, but it's that type of experience. So like my first day there, they welcome me. I'm there at the facility with 20 other people who have serious substance abuse problems. And it was all Americans from all over the country, from New York, Florida, Texas, California. And they were all walks of life, and they all did different things. And so it was like a substance abuse center. So all they were allowed to do was smoke, but lights would go out at 8:00. You would be expected to go back to your room at that time. They would provide the meals, and it was right by the beach. So my second day there, I went out to the beach, and the shaman's name was Beto. He doesn't like for me to call him a shaman, but that's what he was. And so he's like a simple dude, man. Had his guitar, had a little box with some stuff, and he goes, "Yeah, dude, come on, let's go do it." And I mean, you guys know me very little, but I seem like a guy who'll jump into the deep end of the pool just to experience what that feels like. But, you know, when he tells me, "Hey, come on, we're going to do the first one," I could just feel my heart like, holy shit, what did I get myself into? But part of me was like, nope, I drove 300 miles to get here. I'm going to see this through, and I'm not going to back out. For whatever reason, I'm here. I believe that this is the way. Like the Mandalorian, right? This is the way. So he sits me down and he says, and you guys are going to love this part. He goes, "You know, honestly, Mitch," he goes, "I'm only used to working with people with problems." He goes, "You are the first person that I'm going to work with." He goes, "Who's healthy?" He goes, "You don't do drugs or alcohol." He goes, "You're just here for the spiritual part of it." He goes, "So thank you for honoring me with that." I didn't know if to be scared or be happy about that, but I'm like, okay, so I guess this is a new one for both of us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he cleans the space. He puts a blanket down on the floor. He was drawing shamanic symbols on the sand because we were right by the water. I was like a 15-yard throw of a football to hit the ocean. It was just right there. So he's cleaning the space. He breaks out the sage. And like, you know, when we used to play football in high school or whatever, and it's right before the game and you're just like, oh my God, I have to play well. I can't blow it. What is this going to be like? Let me remember my assignments. How many positions am I playing today? Like, you know, you're going through all that, sprinkle in all the say no to drugs nonsense and McGruff the crime dog and all the religious stuff. And so all that is hitting you right before it, you know? And so, you know, in martial arts, I did tons of breathing, man. So I was just like, I have to breathe my way through this because it's a real big experience. Like, and for a person who doesn't do drugs, I mean, dude, I might have smoked a little pot and might have drank a little bit, but I've never put myself where I'm out, you know? So this experience was going to be completely new for me. I believe I was 42 at the time or something. And so, you know, he breaks out the pipe and I'm like, oh my God, I'm becoming a crack addict type of thing, you know? And so it's a pipe and he put like 4 crystals and he goes, "Mitch, you have to smoke all of it, okay?" And I'm like, okay. And it was super serious, man. It was ceremony. It was straight ceremony. He was clearing the space, drawing symbols on the floor. And instead of giving it too much thought, dude, he like pushed it forward. I was like, I grabbed it and I was like, and I smoked like 3/4 of it, dude. And the medicine was already kicking in right there. And I pushed it away And Beto was like, Mitch, you have to finish it. And I was like, no, man, but they're leaving. And he started laughing and he goes, no, you're okay, you know? So I smoked the rest of it. And it's such a bizarre feeling, like, have you guys seen Doctor Strange?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, remember when the Ancient One hits Doctor Strange and he flies out of his body?
Leaves his body.
And it's like his spirit? Dude, I fell to my knees, and it was hilarious, man, because I could just hear in my head, you drove all this way for this experience. This experience is going to be good for you. You have to let go. So I was on my knees, man, and Beto says, Mitch, you have to lay down for it to start. But dude, your ego is so accustomed to being in control of your body, I couldn't lean back and fall on my back.
Wow.
I was like, my arms were like this. My hands were like, I was rocking forward, like my ego didn't want to let the medicine do its job. And he put his hand on me and he goes, mijo, like son, he goes, you have to lay down. So like when we were kids, man, watching WWF, I just threw myself back to get myself on my back because I couldn't rock myself easily. My body was just not wanting to let go of the control part. So I proceeded to like throw myself back and I landed flat on my back. And it was like something else, man. It was like you were on another planet, but I could still hear the ocean. I could see the plants. And all I hear is then I hear like electricity, man, like zzz. And I remember telling the shaman, oh my God, Beto, you laid me down in a bed of bees. And he started laughing because he's singing, man. He's doing his shamanic songs. He's burning incense, burning tobacco, throwing salt on the floor. I mean, he's doing the thing, right? And so I'm hearing all this electricity. And real quick, pause. There was a chemical engineer there, like one of those granola dudes from Berkeley. And after my experience, he goes, bro, did you hear it? And I'm like, Alex, what are you talking about? And he goes, bro, did you hear your hemispheres? And I started laughing. And I go, oh my God, Alex, I thought I was laying in bees. And he goes, no, bro. He goes, do you know that the only time that both your hemispheres in your brain are firing is when you're doing plant medicine? He goes, so what you heard was your brain firing synapses, neurons. It's like going on.
Wow. Huh.
He goes, and it's the only time it happens when you've taken plant medicine.
Is it daytime or nighttime?
It's daytime.
Okay.
So that's after the fact. Let's go back to the experience because this will probably break your heart. So I throw myself on my back like it's WWE. I'm listening to the bed of bees. And my brain is just firing, bro. It's just like I'm hearing all this electricity. And I'm just breathing my way through the experience because you absolutely know when you're under the influence of the medicine, your ego is no longer there. The judgment is no longer there. That little voice inside your head is not there anymore. It's gone. And it almost feels weird because you miss it because you're so accustomed to it. You know, and I'm just like, but it was weird because I was breathing and I was like, this is what it's like not to judge myself. I'm at the beach. It's a beautiful day. And then at that time, dude, a golden eagle yells and flies around me 3 times, like something out of a Jim Morrison song. She flies around me 3 times. He takes off. And the shaman was like, good, Mitch, that's your spirit totem. She's here for you. But dude, you're not there, dude. You're like on another plane.
Which plant was this that you smoked at the time?
This was the bullfrog.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and so just so that you guys understand, normal plant medicine, depending on how much you ingest, normally you have to take about 3 to 5 grams to have a psychedelic experience of any plant medicine. So the bullfrog is different because that's like a smoked substance. That's like a rock. You know, then it's not even like crack. It's like he made it like in little squares. Like, you know, when we used to eat candy when we were little, like little popsicles and it breaks and it looks like a little rock.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like. It looked yellow. But because this one has an extra molecule of oxygen, Alex, you're hitting fast forward on the experience. You're like, smoke, fast forward,
How long does it last?
That experience, man, can last like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how your experience is. You know, I know people like to treat things with a lot of fear because that's how we're conditioned, right? But it was real interesting because the shaman told me, he goes, Mitch, he goes, this plant, he goes, this medicine, he goes, has a masculine energy. He goes, so this is going to be an intense one. And he was talking to me like, you know how Latin people speak with a lot of terms endearment, mijo, baby boy. He was treating me like he was my dad. He goes, Mitch, this is going to be incredible for you. He goes, because you have no other chemicals running through your body. This is just the medicine in you. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm laying in the bed of bees and my brain is like just firing. I guess both hemispheres look like a scene of the Matrix. And really what I was there for, Frank, like you mentioned earlier, I could recognize that I was extraordinarily angry at my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my siblings, my wife, my kids. I was just angry at everyone because I felt like they got in the way of my life. Mm. You know, like, as you know, Frank, my dreams to be on air, doing broadcasting, doing these things. And at the point in my life when I was really close, you know, my kids came along and I immediately became dad and I left my dreams to the side. So even though people always want to rationalize that type of decision, like it's the right decision, but in reality, I still took an opportunity away from me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I had interviewed with ESPN, dude. I was like, dude, I'm going to be the first Mexican anchor. That's what that was on my vision board, you know? And after suffering so much, I thought, you know, that's where I was headed. But so when I was there laying on my back, the medicine started showing me like trailers of lives. And I saw a trailer of my mom's life. My mom, very little. My mom seeing her dad die. My mom being a beautiful young woman, but her suffering. And I saw her suffering, like real horrible, where I was just like, damn, that's terrible. Like, I can't believe my mom went through that and never shared it with me, right? Then I saw my dad. Horrible experiences for my dad. And the trailer, bro, looks like you're watching a trailer of a movie.
I was going to say, so this is something you're seeing, like
in my mind,
physically, or it's in your head?
Okay,
mind. Got you.
It's so in my mind like you're dreaming. Like, remember the beautiful girl dream? That everything feels real and tangible and you could smell it? You almost have to remind yourself. And Beto did this. He told me, he goes, Mitch, remember, you're just watching it. Mm-hmm. Because, dude, watching your mom be destroyed, your dad be destroyed, dude, we're still their people. We're still their kids. So then I saw the movie of my mom. I saw the movie of my dad. I saw the movie of my grandmother when my grandfather died. And I could feel their pain, like how heartbroken they were, how destroyed they were. Then I saw my wife. I saw everything she had gone through. I saw my children in their brief lives with their special needs and their challenges. And then, oh my God, this is like the most intense part. And then I can hear my higher self tell me, you see, Mitch, you think they've hurt you or taken something away from you. But look what they've been through. And especially it focused on times I was mean to my mom, times I was disrespectful to my dad, times I was mean to my grandmother or my wife or my kids. And I'm seeing this, Alex, like on a trailer because my eyes are closed. But under the influence of the medicine, the images are super clear. And it makes me so emotional thinking about it because when my higher self told me, he goes, Mitch, you see that you've taken from them as much as they've taken from you. And they still love you. Oh my God, dude, that was like, dude, I was crying hysterically. Like, you know, when you cry as a kid after your mom whoops your ass, that you're like, like you can't even catch your breath. The crying is so okay. And dude, that was within the first 10 minutes of that medicine, Alex.
Wow.
And because your ego is not present, the medicine is so strong. And the shaman told me this too, because like you, Alex, I'm inquisitive. So I was like, dude, how? What? And then this and that, you know, and then we watch all these movies. And movies show us nonsense. And he told me straight up, dude, like the most serious face. And he's a real jovial guy that laughs and is joking all the time. He goes, mijo, I don't know how the plant medicine knows what it's supposed to teach you, but it's going to teach you it. And there's not going to be any jokes, any laughter. This is just going to be straight lessons that you need to know. With the most serious face, bro. So, dude, being influenced by Hollywood and shit, we think, oh my God, goblins and demons and shit are going to... No. Dude, the biggest devil is yourself. And so then, the plant medicine showed me my family's experiences, and I understood that as being like, say, you guys are my friends. You guys are my friends because of choice, but not because of the labels and the expectations I put on you. So it's like a form of detachment, I have to love Alex for Alex. I have to love Frank for Frank, good or bad. Love is love. Love isn't what you do for me or what I do for you. So that was the first lesson, right? And in reality, bro, at that point, Alex, I was like, I want out. It's like,
oh, really?
It was so much emotion. I was like, I don't know if I could see this through.
Right. I got a week left.
Well, because remember, our subconscious records 95% of what's happened to us. So just because we can recall maybe 5%, dude, what's in here? What could possibly be in here? So I have that detachment part of the ceremony where I saw my family and I had to release them and just love them for being themselves. And then I had the element of forgiveness where my higher self told me that I had hurt them as much as they've hurt me. So I had to forgive them.
Man, that's so interesting.
But also I had to forgive myself, Alex.
Yeah.
Because everyone always looks from the outside in. Real life is from the inside out.
True.
So I realized, dude, that I was just hating them and loving them all at once, right? Polarity, duality, like we talk about. And dude, that was the first 10 minutes of that medicine. One of the other lessons I remember, this is described like as an egoic death in many cultures and plant ceremonies. You realize that the ego's there just to protect you, man, because of all the trauma you've been through your life. So the ego is rather just a tool of our psyche, because we're mind, body, and spirit. So the ego is in there and he's just trying to help you. Hey, Frank, don't do this again, because remember you got fired last time when you did that shit. Alex, please don't make that comment because your engineer is going to get pissed. So that's what the ego's there, right? Trying to help, trying to coach. But remember, the ego doesn't understand if you're actually in danger. So what's interesting about this is there's something called, now to get sciencey on you guys, it's called sympathetic nervous system dominance, which we all know as our fight or flight. But the reason so many human beings are having issues is because our fight or flight is stuck. We operate from fight or flight all the time. So even if we're okay, we wouldn't know it because our brain thinks we're in danger. And I'll give you a great example of this. How many people do you know say, oh my God, I changed my diet, but I haven't been able to lose weight. And I'm taking all these medications and now I'm eating a piece of paper and drinking only water. And I haven't lost 2 pounds. Well, what that person doesn't know, because we're sympathetic nervous system dominance living, fight or flight, your brain is working on survival. Your brain is like, what? You want to lose 5 pounds? Who gives a shit? We're healthy at 250 pounds. We can take on anyone who comes at us. We can defend ourselves. We can chop trees or whatever scenario the brain creates. Sympathetic nervous system is in place. So now you can understand when you do a plant ceremony, dude, that survival mechanism is turned off. Then you're like present.
What differences did you notice, like going from the frog to then like doing ayahuasca, which I would guess is like probably the biggest of all of the things you did there?
Oh, no. The frog is considered the strongest because of the extra molecule of oxygen it possesses. It instead of like ayahuasca and mushrooms, they take about 30 minutes to kick in.
Right.
But the bullfrog, dude, the bullfrog is like when we were little and put a VHS and you only want to watch the fight scenes. You're like, get there.
But I guess I'm thinking when I've heard about people's DMT experiences, they talk about even like leaving this dimension, seeing spiritual beings. It's not so much. I don't even know. Maybe it's not in your head, but it's more like hallucinogenic or, like I'm saying, like another astral plane. Does ayahuasca do that as well?
Yeah. And what I think happens with these plant medicines, Alex, is kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Like, remember when Dorothy peels the curtain back and is like, oh, here it is, right? It's like all her ideas and her preconceptions and her judgments and prejudices were existing on this side of the fence. But like you said, you move to another plane and it's like, oh, that's a lie. That's just created by my mind. But I'll take you to the ayahuasca ceremony. So, just be warned, guys, what no one tells you about the ayahuasca ceremony. Every ayahuasca ceremony has an element of what they call a purge. So when we were at the ayahuasca ceremony, we were all sitting in a circle of like 20 people, and the shaman is giving you glasses of the ayahuasca one at a time. So when you take the medicine, it takes about 30 minutes to kick in, but that medicine lasts a long time. So the bufo medicine, probably like 20, 30 minutes. Ayahuasca lasts like, you could have like an 8-hour experience, depending on how much you ingest.
Right.
So we were all in the circle. I took like 4 cups of it, and that's straight up earth, bro. Like, have you ever taken a shot of wheatgrass?
Yeah.
Okay, now imagine a tall cup of wheatgrass. You know that flavor where you're like, oh, that's grass, bro. Okay, well now imagine like that grass, dirt flavor. But again, my desperation was so high. I was like, dude, I had this experience with bufo. Dude, like, bring it on. That's how I was. Right. They would tell me, hey, you want to taste this? Bring it on. Want to do that? Bring it on. This? Bring it on. So the element of the purge, according to Beto, the shaman, you puke, and you puke your guts out. I filled a bucket and a half of puke. And I had been fasting for 3 days thinking I was slick. I was like, yeah, bro, I'm going to fast and, I'm going to commit myself to the project. I'm not going to drink any soda, water, and air, so that when I get to the ceremony, I won't throw up as much. Is what I was saying. Dude, I took 4 shots of the ayahuasca, and dude, I puked my guts out to the point where I'm like, I just didn't even know where it was coming from anymore. But according to the shaman, dude, you're puking all that bile and everything. You're just getting rid of all the toxins and the impurities that are inside your body. So, and imagine, I filled up a bucket and a half. Dude, the substance abuse people, the assistants of the shaman were just chucking buckets out into the trash. And they were just like, dude, and they were having horrible experiences. I puked, and according to the shaman, he goes, Mitch, you're going to have an extraordinary experience. He goes, but sometimes people fall asleep. He goes, and that's great too. He goes, it's not always about seeing the psychedelic stuff. He goes, but you're going to see a lot of that too. So after I puked my guts out and Frank's all scared, dude, I mean, imagine the worst time that you've been sick and then amplify it times 2. Just like you're puking. Dude, I was puking so much. I remember thinking, where is this coming from? I'm like, I haven't eaten in 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, and when we puke normally, it's like, it looks like acidic, like yellow, when there's nothing in your tummy anymore. Okay, no, dude, I was given it. It was black, filled 2 buckets. Wow. And after I did all that, dude, you're so tired. You feel like you ran 20 miles because you were using so much of your body to get that out. It's, what the shaman told me. He goes, Mitch, you're getting rid of all the poison in your body, in mind, body, and spirit. He goes, so all the poisonous emotions that you've been dealing with, he goes, you can see them right there. And so, dude, I had 2 buckets, and I was just like, Christ almighty. To the point where I was like, I don't think I have anything left to give, dude. It's like, there's nothing there, but evidently there was enough for 2 buckets. And so then I took my blanket and I lay down, and then I could hear my grandma's voice. She was like, baby, She goes, you need to go to sleep right now. She goes, because you can't see what's going to happen. And I was like, but no, I want to see it. I want to see it. And she goes, no. And you know when your grandmother would put you to sleep and she would like tap you on your back and just go, shh, shh, shh. And that would help you fall asleep. Mm-hmm. So, dude, I fell asleep for 6 hours. Obviously, you go somewhere. But when I woke up, dude, I'm feeling like $1,000,000. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm fucking awesome. And then I wake up, dude, and I start seeing what's going on around me. And all the substance abuse people, dude, were in straight torment, like a purgatory. And like you said, Alex, I could see shadows dancing amongst them, like terrorizing them. And I remember when I saw it, and I was like, holy shit! And because you can see that with the ayahuasca, you can see it. That wasn't in your mind's eye. I'm looking, and it's psychedelic. You know, the moon is dancing. There was dogs there, and even the dogs were like tripping out. And it was weird because the dogs were there. Like there was like 9 strays in that neighborhood. And when we did the ceremony, dude, all the 9 strays created a circle around us. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, dude, if dogs feel that it's necessary to protect this place, I'm like, damn, this is going to be crazy. And so I slept for like 6 hours. I got up, and dude, all the guys that were the people that had substance abuse problems were still puking their guts out. I could see the shadows, bro, like harlequin clowns dancing around them, like, and the guys were just like in absolute torment. And some of the things I heard, dude, I remember hearing them, and I was just like, I remember praying for them because they were all real close to me, dude. So there's nothing they could have said that I would not have heard. But I heard, sorry, Mom, for hitting you. Sorry, Dad, for pushing you. Sorry, Mom, for stealing from you. Sorry, Mom, for mistreating you. Sorry to their wives, to their kids. But I mean, Alex, with an intensity of absolute regret. Like, I remember being there, and the shaman like pulled me back a little bit, and he goes, Mitch, just stay here. And I was outside of their circle, so I could see everything going on. Some people were punching themselves, hitting themselves, just crying uncontrollably, man. It was like, it must have been like their come to Jesus moment of all the stuff they did, because that ayahuasca, the shaman told me, has a feminine energy. So because I was raised by women, dude, I knew I was going to have a good experience. And I remember sitting there, Alex, and you're going to love this part. So I'm watching, you know, Dante's Inferno in front of me. And I remember being so impressed by it. But I was like, no, I have to see it, because you're seeing it in real life. Like I'm talking to you right now, you're seeing these things torment them. And I remember I look over, and there was like a white orb, a really big one with colorful sprinkles. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, dude, you're my guardian angel. And he was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, I'm just sitting here protecting you from that. And I was like, you're protecting me? And he goes, yeah, you don't want to know what that is. He goes, but Mitch, I never leave you. I've always been with you. Every time you hurt yourself as a kid, when you were alone, when you were praying, when you were crying on the floor of your house. Dude, and I had just been crying on the floor of my house like a month ago.
Did you recognize the voice? Was it anyone, like a grandparent or anyone you knew?
No, it wasn't. It was him, or what you would call your higher self. But it was a trip, man. And I could see him like I can see this cup of coffee. Like it was that wow. tangible, where it was like, and it was weird, man, because, you know, at that point you're seeing that we're so much more than your flesh, your mind, your brain. We truly are mind, body, spirit, and an absolute divinity. I mean, it is an absolute gift to have a life that we have. You know, I've lost 4 or 5 friends in the last year. Cancer, diabetes, types of illnesses. And so when I'm sitting there, dude, and I'm talking to my higher self, dude, you believe in magic. It's like you're inside a Disney movie. A Disney movie you're watching, and you go to Disneyland as a kid, and then someone drops you in the middle of a movie. And yeah, man, my higher self was like, dude, I'm always with you. Like, you're good. You're good. And he kept telling me, he goes, dude, everything's okay. He was like trying to coach me. And this is another thing I understood. When we're on the other side, even though it seems like a really long time for us, Alex, you're there like microseconds. So when my higher self was telling me stuff, he was like, Mitch, don't forget to do this. Mitch, don't forget to tell your mom this. And it's like, he's trying to give me all these downloads. And I was so in the medicine. I was like, dude, what's your rush? And he was like, no, he goes, because you're going to forget. And that's what he kept telling me. You're going to forget. And he was like, I'll come to you in dreams. And I'm always with you. He goes, but you won't be able to hear me unless you do the medicine again. And that was, and dude, and that lasted like 8 hours, bro.
Did anybody from the other, from your group come out of that with the sense that this was not right for them, that they should not have gone down that road? No. Everyone told me that there was parts of it that were extraordinarily intense, but they all saw their ancestors. They all had loving experiences. It's like the medicine taught them what they're not doing good and what they haven't done good, and then who you are and what you're capable of. A reason I ask, and you might see where I'm going with this, but I'm hearing this experience and I'm thinking, well, shoot, everyone will do it. Yeah. Well, not only everyone will do it, but certainly there are folks who could benefit from that type of experience. Particularly, what comes to mind is people, adult men, who have made the decision to not participate in their lives anymore. Right. For one reason or another. And to have whatever experience, because it sounds like the experience that you have is the one that you need to have. That, like you mentioned, it wasn't, I don't know how the medicine knows, but it does. And so it's divine, baby boy. So right. It gets instructions from on high. And when I hear this, I'm hopeful. It sounds great. I'm so happy that you got to experience this, Mitch, and that you have this knowledge, and that you got to get in touch with all of the shit, right? Yeah. And to play and to play in the dirt and to go to battle with yourself. I can only think that like this is a step in the right direction, but how do we get there? How do we make it so that this is accessible? And also, how do we make it so that, like, for example, I can't tell you how many people I hear talk about the legality of psilocybin in Oregon, and then conflating that with people just taking a drug, right? Or partying, or something like that, right? Where it's like, how do you get the stigma of this kind of experience away from recreational drugs? And I see too much of that intermixing, and it frustrates me a lot, because if people were able to hear this experience, maybe they wouldn't, maybe they'd be too afraid to go and take that journey, but at least they would have the baseline understanding that this isn't something that you mess with. This isn't something that you flippantly just decide to participate in. This is something that deserves a whole heck of a lot of respect. Yeah, it's from the ceremonies I've done, I approached it with a lot of reverence. And it's like, it's interesting because I think what the medicine taught me in all those days is like, I have 4 tenets now that I try to teach everyone I come in contact with. I talk to them about self-love, self-trust, self-forgiveness, and self-awareness. Those are like my 4. But it was only through the medicine, dude, that I really learned to like forgive myself and then let go of all the judgment. Because we are judgment creatures, man. It's so hard to explain that, because when I try to tell people we are stuck on autopilot on the worst operating system ever introduced into the human body. Because remember, we had our parents' traumas, prejudices, and judgments input into us at our most sensitive time, which has become our adult operating system. Where do you think midlife crises come from, bro? Because someone wakes up and says, oh my God, I'm living my mom's life. I'm living my dad's life.
And I hate those fools, but I'm already married, 5 kids, career, and then people do crazy shit. But it's like, it's such a cry for help. And I used to be very judgmental about that, man, until my wife and I had some challenges. And it's like if you love someone, dude, love is action. You know, F. Scott Peck has the best description of love I've ever heard. He says, love is your willingness to extend yourself in order for the people in your circle to be taken care of and have the best experience. Because love implies selflessness. Dude, I can't love you. If I really want to love you and it be a healthy love and not codependence, there has to be an element of detachment. I have to allow you to be frank. And you're going to make all the mistakes, dude. But what I try to tell my clients is friction is freedom. Life friction is the trail that leads you to love, leads you to development, leads you to ascension. And then people tell me, yeah, Mitch, but you don't know, this happened to me. I'm like, dude, I got hit by a car going 80 miles an hour 2 years ago. I understand what suffering is, but I've also seen the other side of suffering, and it's extraordinary. And that's that spark of the divine that Alex has, that you have. But society convinces you you're not special, you're not unique, you're not divine. The truth is we all are.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, to hear you talk about like the trauma you carried or just things from your life, your parents' life. You're selling me on it big time, just because I come from a family, like my parents got divorced when I was very young, and then both ended up getting remarried. Those families were together for 10, 12, 13 years, and then they both actually got divorced again. So a lot of those feelings that you were kind of harboring and feeling, I feel you there. Like I'm not to get into make it a therapy session, but like I feel like I share some of that and would benefit from an experience like this, because maybe I'm harboring bad emotions or ill will or anything like that, to where something that like this is could be really beneficial.
Well, if you really think about it, Alex, and just sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah.
What people don't understand is our brain is really like a computer, man. It's just assimilating data.
Right.
But let's say when you were going through all these horrible experiences, you don't have any logic to say, oh, my mom and dad are human beings with certain limitations. They didn't make good decisions. They didn't make good decisions and got together. And then this is all the fallout, but it's not my fault. And I'm not attached to it. Right. That's like now. But when you're little, dude, it might as well be a Hadouken from Street Fighter. Bang! Yeah. And your brain is like, oh my God, I deserve Hadoukens. And so you go through the rest of your life and you're waiting for the Hadouken. You're waiting for the Hadouken. And everything's cool. And then it happens, and you're like, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it, dude. Right. Okay, well, imagine when you're in the plant medicine, dude, it allows you to process some of those real painful memories. And then you digest them and you let them go. Then you have the context of being able to look at a situation, and you're not picking the good guy versus the bad guy. My mom is the best. My dad's a douche. No, you're like, hey, they're human beings, limited education. They made bad decisions, but their bad decisions was the nuclear bomb that blew up my brothers and I.
Right.
Okay, but imagine being able to deflate that balloon inside of you, Alex. You might go, I can breathe
well, and
today.
it's like, and like you're talking with the ego, like that can a lot of times like make you play the victim a lot in your own head. Like I see that in my life all the time.
The victim, bro.
Yeah,
the ego loves the victim. No,
so man,
Frank doesn't understand that when I was little, they didn't let me eat Lucky Charms and shit. Dude, your brain. And inside your brain is a little guy with a typewriter. Oh my God, I love that. Let's make a screenplay of that. We're going to make a movie. It's going to win 1,000 Academy Awards, and you're going to be the main actor. And you're going to be great because it really happened to you. And Lucky Charms, everyone needs to eat Lucky. And it creates this narrative. Dude, and you believe the narrative. You know, I read a neuropsychologist say that as years go by, like 5 years go by, our memory is 85% less accurate. Wow. So imagine everything you think, oh no, I remember it.
Right.
Dude, I would love to put a movie on, rewind it, and you might be the fucking tormentor, bro, or the tyrannical guy running around.
Right, probably.
But your brain remembers the emotion, right? Mm-hmm. And the emotion was pain, and it was hurt, and it was sorrow, and no one was there to say, "Hey, Alex, it's okay, dude. Fuck it, don't worry. It's not your fault. I love you. You love you." It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like these critical moments that it could have been nipped in the bud. But then we carry that forward with our partners, with our girlfriends, with our friends. And it's like, and that's why the detachment lesson is so important. Because Frank, if you're my friend, you're down for me. So if we're at a bar and 5 guys come, we're going to jump them. We're going to fight. No, that's not Frank's fault. Frank should have nothing to do with it. I don't care how much he loves me as a friend. That is not his business. More importantly, I shouldn't be doing stuff like that because that's how people get in accidents and get killed. Dude, and I'm trained to do that. And I'm like, hey, that's just not a good thing. But it's those things that I wish people understood, especially people suffering through mental health problems, that it's like, hey, that narrative might not be completely accurate. I'm not saying something didn't happen to you. And if it's like, you know, you got your ass beat or some type of sexual abuse, or yeah, absolutely. But let's work on that so you can move past that, not stay stuck there. Because that will always be an active part of your personality.
You know, Mitch, when I over 10 years ago, I was going through some stuff and I had reached out to you. One of the most impactful things that I ever heard was you had told me when I was going through this time, you need to stop making these movies in your head. And I had never even one time thought that I was doing. But then you brought awareness to that and I was like, oh, wow, I am. Right? Because how many of these things that I'm thinking are actually real? They actually happened? Are they actually in reality?
Are they going to come true?
Are they going to come true? Or how much of it is it just me taking one thing and just running with it and just running with it? So yeah, and I think it comes back to what we were talking about when we first started talking today about that cognitive dissonance, that you could hear information that goes against what you're telling yourself in your head, and it still doesn't make that impact until you have that breakthrough of, oh, actually, this isn't true at all. Not only is this not true, it's something I've made up in my own head. And how many bridges am I building to go over these gaps that I'm filling in my own brain? And that stuck with me, man. To this day, it's been one of the best things that I turn to, that I bring awareness to, is how much of this is real. And if I'm using my better judgment to say I'm here at point A and I've arrived at point B, and the things that are in between, I'm filling in the gaps myself. And if it becomes, 2-3 bridges that I'm building, that might be too many. And then if it's 5 or 6 or 7, that's definitely too many bridges.
Yeah.
And it's just so helpful. Yeah. I wanted to bring that up because it talking about it stuck with me for forever.
No, what's funny, Frank, is what you're describing is going back to the sympathetic nervous system living. We're just living in fear. We're looking for the boogeyman. The opposite side of sympathetic nervous system is parasympathetic, where we're able to rationalize, come to a conclusion, breathe our way through it, entertain different possibilities, maybe go for a run, maybe go for a walk in the sunlight, go dancing, do art, do things to balance all that. Because remember, your brain, we programmed our brain to always think in terms of fear. So now, how do we break down fear? Well, let's say us 3 are going to go for a walk in the park. And there's a gang of Rottweilers at the park, and they look fired up. I'll look to you guys and say, hey, guys, we're not going to the park, right? Because that's danger. They will probably hurt us. Okay, same scene. Let's say we're going to the park and we see dogs in the distance, but around the corner, all their owners are sitting there drinking coffee. But you're imagining, oh my God, those dogs are going to mow us down. That's fear, because you're imagining the scenario. There's danger and fear. Dude, fear is an idea. Fear is an emotion. You can crush that. Supersede that with logic, right? And belief and faith and love and everything. And then we walk We see all the owners, they're having their coffee, a bunch of hipsters and shit. And maybe the dogs from a distance look big, and maybe when we get there, dude, they're beagles. And you're like, it's not meant to be afraid of. But it's like, once you start conditioning your brain like that, then your brain starts learning, oh, okay, maybe that's not as big of a deal as I thought. It's like, maybe we'll just work through it. Or maybe the situation just is what it is, and that's also okay.
You described yourself as spiritual. I'm sure you were before this. I have to imagine that this heightened that spiritual awareness, that identity in you after this whole experience. Would you say that with the things you saw and everything, did it ease any notions of death, any fears of death, like connecting on the spiritual level to the earth and the plants and just everything? Like, did that ease anything, or are they kind of not related?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like after those experiences with the plant medicine, I became really aware that I'm a mind, body, spirit machine, kind of like the Matrix, where they put in an identity in a person and that person is who it is. And that everything is precious, man, that time is really short, that even if I live 90 years and that might go in a blink of an eye. And the death part as well. It's like, don't get me wrong. Death is always something you're aware of, but because I am of a spiritual nature and believe in reincarnation, I also don't feel like this is the end. It'll just be a more advanced version of me in its next incarnation, whatever that may look like. But what's funny is a lot of what my higher self was trying to tell me, I find myself being that with my kids. Especially when I see them stressing, I'm like, hold on, don't stress. It's da-da-da-da-da, and I try to help them process it, and I help them try to talk through it. And it's unfortunate, man, because I tell them, I go, guys, I'm not going to be around for a really long time. Help me give you all the information I can. And dude, they don't even know yet, Alex. My son's 18. My other son's 15. Dude, when my eldest son turns 21, plant medicine. When my other one turns 21, plant. But those I'm going to do with them.
So you would do it again. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, dude, between you and I buy mushrooms and I do ceremonies for myself, but I'm very careful about how much I consume. Because if you can consume about 2 grams of whatever, and it's still very strong. Yeah. You consume 4 to 5 grams of something, dude, it's like Star Trek. It beam me up, Scotty. You're trying to willfully walk across the veil. And again, I treat that with a lot of respect, man. And I look at it with a lot of reverence, because a lot of people get addicted to the idea, because the plant medicine, it takes pressure off you. And you don't realize you're living under so much pressure, even though your body's giving you indications. You're constipated. You get tummy aches when you drink milk, or you can't eat tomato sauce, or our body's trying to communicate with us, but it doesn't speak English. It speaks body, right? Vibration, frequency. So now, Alex, I've been taking much better care of my diet, man. I stopped drinking coffee. I kicked coffee with mushrooms.
Oh, right? Interesting.
Right before one ceremony I did for myself like a month ago, because coffee becomes acetylcholine, dude. And if that's not measured in your body, that puts you into fight or flight. The chemical does. Chemical creates a reaction in your body. So the last ceremony I did for myself, I was like, hey, Holy Mother, Holy Father, I don't want to be really hooked on coffee anymore. I don't want to feel like I was drinking 5 or 6 cups, bro, to cope with all the pressure and stress of modern life. And I recognized that that's just not good for me. So I had a ceremony for myself here at my house, in my room, cleared space, sage, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, I don't want to drink coffee anymore. And that was a month ago, and I haven't had a cup of coffee since.
Man, that's such a cool thing to do it with such intent, to go into it with this is what I want, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and I'm doing this in order to help alleviate me of this addiction that I have to coffee, caffeine, whatever it could be. I had somebody very near and dear to me who was in the military and saw a lot of shit, and was able to get into military-sponsored clinical trials for ketamine.
Oh, yeah.
And the benefits to that, I mean, I was told that they were able to have after the first treatment, they had a full night's sleep for the first time in years.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And it was with the intent of, hey, I know that there's things that I saw that I'm not able to deal with. I'm not able to process. I can't digest this fully and correctly. So I want to do this in order to alleviate that instead of just like popping it. As I've gone older, I've gotten a lot more conscious of a mind-altering substance and the strength that it has, even something as little as like marijuana.
Yeah.
That it's a non-trivial thing to do. And as you what I don't particularly believe that, marijuana is a gateway drug, but I think it certainly does allow you to open the door to other things. I'm not saying you're going to become an addict, but it certainly allows you to go from this step to that step. And if you're going to be doing that, I think the most important thing, and this is just me personally, is intention. Is to do it with something. Is to do it with something in mind, not just like, oh, I want to experience this. Because then you can tell me I'm wrong, Mitch, but to me, that's just opening up Pandora's box. Like, oh, you want to see the devil? Well, here he is, motherfucker, and like, enjoy it.
Oh, when people tell me, oh my God, I saw this, I saw that, and they're describing really horrible things, no judgment. But in my mind, I always think, well, dude, what were you doing? What's going on the inside of you? Are you a liar? Are you a cheater? Are you a thief? Are you doing all these fucked up things? Because let me ask you a question. Let's say you do plant medicine and the intention is to heal. If there's a divine spirit, why would they punish and torment you? That doesn't make sense to an omnipresent being, right? Alex wants to get better. Let me scare the shit out of him. No. But what if Alex shows us that he's normal, but when we don't see him, you're a fucking devil? Well, when he does plant medicine,
you have no idea.
You have no idea, right? And what your friend did with the ketamine, dude, thank God. And it's an extraordinary blessing, because what's ironic is one of the things I read in the shaman journals and stuff, when soldiers would lose their heart and didn't want to go back in war, they would do plant ceremonies. And I'm sure, like, now we're looking at it like a sciencey thing. Well, it makes sense. Plant medicine helps them digest the trauma. They deal with the trauma. They're able to get back to kind of homeostasis. Then they can function as human beings. Like you just said, your friend was able to sleep. Imagine, dude, your friend hasn't been at peace for years. Hasn't slept probably more than 2-3 hours at a time in years. And then people wonder why he doesn't look happy. He's fucking tired, dude.
Yeah, right.
He hasn't rested. Shit. So it's one of those things that, like you, Frank, I don't like how people treat something that's sacred, in my perspective, as something recreational. Because anything done for recreation, I mean, let's be honest, dude, like alcohol, cigarettes, right? That's recreational drug use. What are the end results of that?
They're almost never positive.
Awful. Never positive, right?
Right.
So you're right. It's interesting when, my wife and some friends, we went out, we were at a dance club, and the guy was like, oh my God, Mitch, I have these great mushrooms. And he tried to hand it to me. And I was like, no. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, dude, you're trying to hand me a psychedelic substance in a nightclub with God only knows who's here, what energies are running around. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm going to drink my beer and I'm good. But I thought you were into all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm into it for ceremony, for healing, for helping someone deal with something. Dude, it's not fun. Like, it's not fun for me. That's not a fun activity.
Yeah.
Because when I'm trying to help someone, dude, those emotions are what are inhibiting that human being from having the best life possible. And dude, you want to take mushrooms at a nightclub where everyone else is under the influence of God knows what? It's like, you want to talk about Luciferianism? That's the environment where stuff is going down. It's funny. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good.
You bet. Well, hey, I could talk about this for literal hours, but I do have to run.
Can I ask one question?
Say, Alex?
One more. I was just curious, like the whole process of going to stay in there for a week and taking all of these plants. Was it affordable? Like, is it a cost effective therapy option?
In Mexico, it's very inexpensive, man. I did the whole thing for probably under $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was like food, lodging, and all the medicine.
Okay.
This is becoming really popular. The most popular one is some of the ones in Costa Rica, because that place is also very liberal, has an element of shamanism, but they do it at resorts over there. Over there, it's more expensive because it's like a 5-star resort. So it's like you went to the Ritz-Carlton and they do ayahuasca.
Man, I should have looked. I was there last year. I should have looked into that.
Oh, dude, it's called Rhythmia. It's Rhythmia.
Rhythmia? Okay, I'll check that out.
Rhythmia, yeah. That was my original destination, but then COVID hit, and so I had to modify my plans.
Gotcha.
But that was originally where I was going to go. But yeah, it's becoming real common all over Peru, Central and South America, Mexico. Yeah,
it's nice that they keep it affordable, though, because it's still about the medicine and what they're doing, not just like let us capitalize off all of these Americans or whatever. Like, it seems like they actually do want to help people. It's not a tourist trap.
They recognize this crazy game that we play here, man, and it's just
yeah.
That is a crazy, crazy game we play. Well, yeah, I really appreciate you being on here. I am a believer in this type of healing, and I think that the more that people can hear conversations about it, the more that it becomes destigmatized, and the more that it becomes a realistic path for somebody who is interested in it. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. And I speak for Alex, so I can't wait to have you back on.
Whatever you guys need, man, I'm totally here, and I'm full support of your program. So whatever you want, I'm down.
Absolutely. Yeah. You are welcome anytime, my friend.
All right, guys. Yeah, have a good one.
That was just excellent, Mitch. Thanks again for coming on. You guys, thanks for listening. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but that was way too interesting to try to cut short.
Yeah.
Whenever that would have been. So
100%. And if you've gotten this far, I hope you've gotten some value out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. In the meantime, if you guys want to check in with us on the socials, until the next episode, you can find us on Twitter at FriendshipNH, trying to build up that community. So please give us a follow if you have one. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Friendship News Hour. And you can always send us an email to bummerdude.media@gmail.com. We'll be sure to get back to you. We'll see you next week. For Frank, I'm going to see you in person next week. That's exciting.
You will.
A little bit.
That's right. That's
Maybe
crazy.
We could do this nipple to nipple kind of.
I've
podcast,
seen you at least 3 or 4 times since we've started this podcast, and we've never once done it in person.
Maybe we'll change that.
All right. See ya.